Have you ever noticed that some of the wealthiest people you know drive perfectly ordinary cars? Not flashy, not new, not anything that turns heads. A Honda Civic, a Toyota Camry, a Ford F-150. These aren't the vehicles of the poor struggling to get by. They're the daily drivers of billionaires, CEOs, and self-made millionaires who understand something fundamental about building and protecting wealth. Today we're exploring why the rich choose boring cars and what that choice reveals about financial privacy, asset protection, and the psychology of long-term wealth building. If you're interested in understanding the unconventional strategies of the wealthy, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss insights like these. Let's start with the most obvious reason. Attention is a liability when you're building serious wealth. When you drive a Ferrari or a Rolls-Royce, you announce your financial status to everyone around you. You become visible. You become a target. People notice, they remember, they talk. In the modern age, that visibility creates problems you might not immediately consider. A flashy car makes you identifiable. It creates a digital footprint. Photos get shared on social media. You become associated with wealth in the minds of people you encounter. That association carries real consequences. Insurance companies adjust your rates based on the vehicles you own and the profile you present. Lawyers remember clients who drive expensive cars. Potential business partners form impressions based on your displays of wealth. And most importantly, people who want access to your resources, whether through lawsuits, solicitation, or worse, can more easily identify and track you. The wealthy understand this intuitively. They know that a boring car is camouflage. It's a tool for remaining invisible in a society obsessed with status symbols. When you drive when everyone else drives, you blend in. You don't get remembered. You don't trigger envy or resentment. You don't become a target. But there's another layer to this strategy that goes deeper into financial psychology and asset protection. Driving an ordinary car is a form of financial discipline that reinforces wealth-building behavior. Every time you choose not to spend money on a depreciating asset like a luxury vehicle, you're making a conscious decision to redirect that capital elsewhere. And that seemingly small decision compounds over time. Consider the math. A luxury car might cost you $200,000 up front, but the true cost includes insurance, maintenance, depreciation, and the opportunity cost of that capital deployed differently. If you invested that $200,000 instead of buying a luxury car at an average annual return of 8%, that money would grow to over $900,000 in 30 years. That's not just the difference between two cars. That's the difference between wealth and a different kind of life entirely. The wealthy don't just understand compound interest intellectually. They live it. Every purchasing decision reflects an awareness that money not spent is money that can work for you. A boring car isn't a compromise for them. It's a deliberate allocation of capital toward long-term value creation. And that mindset extends far beyond automobiles. It becomes the foundation of how they approach all spending decisions. There's also a psychological component that deserves examination. Humans are status-seeking creatures. We use possessions to communicate our position within social hierarchies. But the wealthy have often already secured their status through means other than consumer goods. They don't need a car to tell people they're successful. Their net worth does that. Their business does that. Their investments do that. So they're freed from the psychological need to display wealth through consumption. This is liberating in ways that aren't immediately obvious. When you stop trying to impress people through what you own, you reclaim both money and mental energy. You stop participating in what economists call positional consumption, spending money primarily to signal status to others. And the moment you step out of that race, you're wealthier, simply because you're spending less and thinking more clearly about value. Now let's talk about asset protection, because this is where the boring car strategy becomes genuinely sophisticated. Your assets exist in a legal and financial landscape that creates vulnerability. The more visible wealth you display, the more exposed you become to a variety of claims and challenges. Someone slips on your driveway and decides to sue. A former business partner claims you owe them money. A disgruntled employee threatens litigation. These scenarios happen constantly. And in these situations, visible assets become targets. A lawyer reviewing your financial profile will note every expensive car, every luxury property, every display of wealth. These become evidence of your ability to pay. They factor into damage awards. They influence settlement discussions. By maintaining an ordinary lifestyle and driving an ordinary car, wealthy individuals create a buffer between their actual net worth and what's visibly apparent. This isn't dishonesty, it's strategic disclosure. It's the difference between having $10 million and appearing to have $2 million. And that gap can be the difference between substantial legal judgments and minor ones, between aggressive negotiation and reasonable compromise. There's also the matter of financial privacy itself, which has become increasingly difficult to maintain. Our transactions are tracked, our properties are registered, our purchases are recorded. But even within those constraints, strategic choices about what you display versus what you keep private matter significantly. A boring car is part of that privacy strategy. It doesn't announce your net worth. It doesn't invite speculation about your finances. It doesn't create a visual reference point for others to estimate your wealth. Consider also the practical advantages that often get overlooked. Ordinary cars are more reliable than exotic cars. A Toyota Camry will run for 200,000 miles with basic maintenance. A high-end sports car requires specialized service, expensive parts, and constant attention. The wealthy understand that reliability is valuable. It removes friction from daily life. It means you're not spending time in service centers or dealing with unpredictable breakdowns. An ordinary car simply works, and that consistency frees you to focus on what actually matters for wealth building: your business, your investments, your strategy. Like this video if you're starting to see how these small choices compound into significant advantages. The boring car strategy isn't about deprivation. It's about clarity and discipline. There's also something worth noting about the psychological signaling that happens when a wealthy person drives an ordinary car. It communicates confidence. A person who's secure in their wealth doesn't need to broadcast it. Someone driving a sensible sedan while running a billion-dollar company sends a message: I'm so secure that I don't need your approval. I don't need to impress you with what I own. That quiet confidence is more intimidating and more respected than any flashy display could ever be. In business contexts, this matters more than you might think. When you're negotiating with someone and they pull up in a decade-old Honda while you're sitting in your new Mercedes, you've already communicated something about your priorities and your confidence level. The person in the ordinary car is implicitly saying, I don't need to win through appearances. My actual capabilities speak for themselves. That's powerful positioning. The boring car strategy also relates to what psychologists call lifestyle inflation. This is the tendency to increase spending as income rises. Most people, when they get a raise or make more money, immediately upgrade their lifestyle. They buy a nicer car, a bigger house, more expensive restaurants. They maintain the same spending rate relative to their new income, so their net worth never actually grows. The wealthy resist this impulse. They increase their income but maintain their lifestyle. They drive the same car. They eat the same food. They maintain the same habits. The gap between their income and their spending grows, and that gap becomes wealth. This isn't about being cheap or depriving yourself. It's about recognizing that experiences and relationships create more satisfaction than status symbols do. A meal with friends is enjoyable whether you're eating in a 5-star restaurant or a casual cafe. A trip is enjoyable whether you're flying first class or economy. But the difference in cost is enormous, and the wealthy have figured out that the happiness dividend from that extra spending is negligible, while the opportunity cost is massive. Let's also consider the tax implications and financial structure aspects. When you own significant assets, your accountant and your attorney think carefully about how and where those assets sit. A luxury car is a personal asset that depreciates rapidly. It creates no tax advantages. It requires registration and insurance in your name, making it visible to the world. An ordinary car, by contrast, can be structured in ways that are less visible and less exposed. It doesn't draw scrutiny. It doesn't invite questions about your financial situation. In the broader context of sophisticated financial planning, the humble automobile becomes a tool for maintaining strategic ambiguity about your actual wealth level. Historically, this strategy isn't new. Many of the wealthiest people of previous generations lived surprisingly modest lifestyles. They understood that ostentation was a vulnerability. They knew that visible wealth created social friction, legal exposure, and psychological dependency on maintaining that display. The boring car strategy is an extension of that long-standing wisdom into the modern era. What's interesting is how this strategy has become even more relevant in our current moment. In an age where financial information is more accessible than ever, where social media creates permanent records of consumption patterns, where algorithmic systems track and analyze our spending, the choice to present an ordinary image becomes more valuable, not less. You're not just protecting yourself from immediate social consequences. You're protecting yourself from data analysis, from algorithmic targeting, from assumptions that will be made about you based on visible spending patterns. The boring car strategy also teaches us something about the relationship between money and identity. For most people, their possessions are central to how they understand themselves. The car you drive says something about who you are. The clothes you wear, the phone you carry, the watch on your wrist, these become identity markers. But wealthy people have often decoupled their identity from their possessions. They know who they are, independent of what they own. That's a form of psychological freedom that's difficult to overstate. When your sense of self isn't dependent on external validation through consumption, you're liberated from enormous amounts of anxiety and pressure. So what can we learn from this? First, recognize that every purchase is a choice about what you value. Second, understand that visibility is often a cost, not a benefit. Third, see discipline not as deprivation but as freedom. Fourth, recognize that the most effective tool for building wealth is often invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It works quietly in the background, compounding over time. The wealthy drive boring cars because they understand something fundamental. The real status symbol isn't the car you drive. It's the freedom you've created through strategic choices and disciplined thinking. That freedom is what boring cars represent. That's what's actually worth aspiring to. If this perspective on wealth building and financial strategy resonates with you, please like the video and subscribe for more insights into how the wealthy think differently about money. And I'd genuinely like to know, if you had to choose, would you rather drive an expensive car that everyone knows about, or have the wealth to drive anything without needing to prove it? Leave a comment below.